Oh people, what a couple of weeks it has been. And given the experiences that I've had these past couple of weeks, I felt it only appropriate to make a video telling you the importance of understanding the difference between the types of risks that are involved with really modifying any car, but I'll relate this more specifically to the MS3. So, number one, whenever you modify your car, there is a word that we all are familiar with called risk, okay? Now, risk is really broken down into two different types of categories. The first type of risk is possibility, and then the second is probability, all right? The possibility of risk really just means that it could happen. There's no real thing outside of the fact that it just could happen, right? You could blow a turbo, you could blow a motor, you could get a flat tire, you could, mess up the suspension. I mean, there's a number of things that quite simply just could happen, all right? Now, probability is a little different, and probability really talks about the chances of those things happening. So, for instance, a statement that would be dealing with probability would be something like there's, a 1 in 25 chance that you could do A if this action's taken. Now, really, in all actuality, there's no real way to measure probability, not officially anyway, when it comes to modifying a car. Just that your chances increase, all right? Now, in mathematics, when you're looking at probability, it's always some number between 0 and 1, right? Because it's a percentage. 1 being the equivalent of 100% and 0 obviously being 0. So when you're modifying your car, there is an increase in the risk of something happening. Again, I don't know if there's really a way to quantify it. I'm sure that there is if we really, collected enough statistical data to do such a thing. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that the possibility of risk happening does increase as soon as you start modifying your car. Now, with the MS3, Mazda builds this a very powerful vehicle out of the factory. Very powerful. Not a whole lot of things available at this price with the type of power. However, because it's so easily modified, it's gonna be just a matter of time before folks like you and folks like me decide to start modifying, right? And it's interesting that when I started modifying this car was really when I got into cars, but I'm missing some of the fundamentals. So, for instance, recently my battery died, right? A lot of you guys are gonna make fun of me for this, but it doesn't matter. Forget you. I don't care. I'm telling you what happened. So, first new mistake that I made was not knowing that batteries have normally 1.5 to 3 year warranties. Didn't know that, okay? So as soon as my battery died, my first thought was, I gotta get a new battery. So went to the store to get a new battery, and because I modified my car the way that I have, I can't use the regular stock size battery. So the information that I needed was basically just what my friends have always told me. When you go in there, you need to ask for a small 51R. But there were some fundamental things that I was still missing. So I go and I ask for the 51R battery, and the first mistake that I made was trusting somebody that works at an auto parts store. Now, I'm not trying to offend you if you do work at an auto parts store. I'm assuming, before this situation that they at least have a baseline knowledge for a majority of the way that things function, all right? Now, I'm gonna go ahead and say that the guy that I was working with is an anomaly because he had zero idea. I went in and said, I need a 51R battery, and he said, well, I have to look up your car because I'm not really sure if that's even the same part number. And right there, I got that feeling like maybe this guy doesn't really know what he's talking about, but let me go ahead and just kind of go with it. So I gave him the make and model of my car, and he starts bringing out stock batteries. And I said, no, I need a small 51R battery. I told him that. So then he brings me out a super tiny battery with like 330 cranking amps. And I'm like, this is like for a lawnmower. Like, this is not gonna power my vehicle. He was like, I know, but this is what you asked for. So we go back and forth about it, and finally I said, okay, you know, like the Optima yellow top batteries? He knew what I was talking about, brought me out one of those, okay? Now, I was in a slight bit of a hurry because I wanted to get my car ready to go so I can go to work the next morning. Anyone that knows Florida at all, it rains at the drop of a dime here. It can be like this one moment, and then 5 minutes later it's pouring rain. So I got the battery, paid for it, went home, put the battery in, and I actually had my wife take off the post covers. So I was like, babe, go ahead and take off the post covers so that I can throw this battery in and, you know, before the rain comes. So she takes them off. When I put the battery in the car and hook it up, I didn't realize that the posts were for a 51 battery, not a 51R. So the sparks started flying, the horn went off, the lights flashed, and then the whole car died. So I noticed that I broke the fuse on the positive battery terminal, and then that's when I realized, holy crap, this is not the right battery. So basically I put the positive terminal on the negative side of the battery. Now, Mazda, for the most part, makes a ton of relays. This is the tech package to protect from power surges, just like what happened in that instance. So the next day I go and I buy the fuse for the terminal. I actually exchanged my old battery for a new one because I found out about the warranty, and then I took the old battery back. Now, mind you, the guy at the auto parts store did not want to take the battery back. He said because I installed it, they're not allowed to return it. And I said, that's ridiculous, because you know I came in here, this is the same guy, you know I came in here yesterday and I said at least 15 times that I need a 51R and you sold me a 51, okay? Now, part of that is my fault because I didn't check your work, but I'm assuming that if you are claiming to be certified to be able to do business in this regard, that you should be able to know what it is you are and aren't selling your customers, period, okay? And for the sake of this company's reputation, I'm not gonna tell you which auto parts store it was, but I am just gonna tell you just to double check. Don't trust everything they tell you. Anyway, back to the story. So I figured out, we took it to Mazda, and there were a couple of fuses that were totally fried. So we replaced all those, but then I had no power steering. So when that surge happened, it totally killed my electric power steering pump. So now we're looking at about $1,000, all right? All because my battery died. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because had my car been totally stock, this would have been simple. I would have walked in there, we would have got a regular battery, I'd have hooked it up, and it'd have been done. But because there were some fundamental things that I didn't even know to look, check, or verify for, I got myself in about $1,000 hole, okay? Now, as you can tell, I'm in the speed now, it's working, we place the pump, it's no big deal. However, you gotta think like, that was $1,000 that I didn't need to spend had I had a better understanding of the fundamental causes of risk with modifying this car, okay? Not excusing my mistake, I should have double checked the battery. So there were so many things that could have been prevented that just weren't, you know? And it's one of those things where you have to understand when you're making changes like I've made to this car, there are some very minute but very important details that you have to make sure that you understand, okay? And that really goes for anything. You know, when you're upgrading a turbo, when you're doing suspension, when you're buying tires, whenever you're taking the car outside of its factory settings, there is an increased probability and possibility that something's going to happen to the car, all right? Now, to try and eliminate that completely is impossible. And like I said, even with the stock cars, bad things can still happen. But just understand the risk that you're taking. And one way to do that is to say, okay, so I'm increasing horsepower, you know, worst possible case scenario is I blow my motor, okay? And even that's not correct, but that is a very, you have a higher probability of blowing the motor with increasing horsepower and torque than you do if you are not. So you have to ask yourself, all right, so am I prepared to get this car running again if something like that happens? And if the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't do it. I understand it's fun, and I'm not trying to be paranoid, but at the end of the day, I mean, what happens if you do all these things to your car, you blow your motor, and you don't have $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 to build it? Okay, you don't have $10,000 or whatever after labor and things like that to get your car rolling again. Now you're in a very sticky situation. So the best thing I would say is look at what the probability is of something happening at this point, and then prepare yourself financially for it. Okay, so it's going to cost me $6,000 to replace my motor. I'm thinking about going big turbo. I know that with the increased torque, something can happen to the rings and pistons. So let me just prepare myself for that when I decide to do this build. Okay, there is nothing about being in the car scene, especially if you're modifying, that is cheap. Okay, one part may cost you $200, but the implications of installing that part incorrectly or not having a good tune, or trying to take shortcuts, can be thousands and thousands of dollars. So it is very important that you know what you are doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, that's fine. Get help. Get help. There's a ton of resources out there that can help you when you're modifying the car. And lately, I've been getting a ton of questions from people who are having issues with their car. And some of them I can answer, and some of them I honestly can't, because in a lot of ways I'm new to this just like you guys are. There's a ton of things that I honestly don't know. I mean, I know my car fairly well, but I am in no way certified to diagnose your issue, and even less certified to tell you how to fix it and things like that. So I always tell people, I'll do my best. I can make points in the right direction, but I am not a certified Mazda master mechanic by any means necessary, not even close. So it's interesting because a lot of it has to do with what you're telling your car to do and how it functions. For instance, my tuner Ryan Martin with Purple Drink, he's got a stock block, first gen MS3, ridiculous amount of horsepower on meth, and has not blown his motor. Okay, does that mean his car is a unicorn? Maybe, but what it really has to do with, he understands the limitations of the vehicle and is able to tune towards those limitations and enhance its strengths. So big shout out to Ryan Martin on that regard. I think that Nishan, who's another very popular MS3 tuner, has a similar situation where he's got a stock block and he's making crazy horsepower. So moral of that story is those folks know what they're doing, okay? And they know how to respect the car. They know how to diagnose the car. And better yet, they know what they're doing when they're installing parts and when things are going wrong and things of that nature. No more than you should do your own medical diagnosis because you're not a doctor. It's probably best that if you don't really understand the car that well, that you get help from somebody who is sort of like the medical doctors of the MS3 platform. This is not a cheap game that we play. It really, really isn't. The MS3 platform is not what it used to be, and it's because people stopped trying to get help. Okay, they go the cheap way. They go the way that's least expensive instead of the way that's least traveled. And the least traveled way is the right way in most cases. So anyway, that's all I've got. I'm pulling into a meeting now. I just want to make you guys a quick video in between appointments that I've got today. So certainly appreciate all your support with the channel, and just remember that no matter what you have done in your past, your future is spotless. Thank you so much. Make it a good one.